hello everyone. Thank you so much for joining me. I want to begin today by making a land acknowledgement. I am currently residing on the unceded territory of the Kumeyaay Nation, and they are the original inhabitants of San Diego County, which is where I am at. And they have lived in this region for more than 10,000 years. And they have historically been horticulturists and hunters and gatherers, but now because of colonization and genocide, they are, obviously in their reservations, and they are still fighting. They're still here. They're fighting for their land rights, for their sovereignty. And I just want to acknowledge that we are on their land. We owe so much to them, and I am very grateful to have been told and raised in a way where we show our gratitude, and we also are aware that we have a lot of work to do and that a land acknowledgement isn't enough. So I encourage you all to know whose Indigenous land you occupy and to get involved in the community and be in solidarity and also be allies to them. If you don't know whose land you're on, you can find out on nativeland.ca, which I link down below. And just, always be reflecting and growing and educating yourself on Indigenous rights and sovereignty. And I also want to thank Anli and Elle for being with us today and giving us their time. Thank you both so much. And I'll let them go ahead and introduce themselves. Anli, if you want to go ahead and start.
Sure. Thank you, Stephanie, for putting all this together and back and forth emails that we had. So I'm so happy to be here. Hi, everyone. My name's Anli. My pronoun is she, her, hers. Currently, I am in New York. I have to find out the indigenous land of the name here, but originally I'm from Charlotte, North Carolina, and I do know that the Catawba nation is that's originally belonged to them, and so for me, my fashion journey really started from when I was a little girl. I wanted to be a fashion designer. And then very early on, I realized that I cannot draw and I don't have the patience to draw. But quickly, I was very interested in the business side of the fashion industry. And in high school, I coordinated a multicultural fashion show. And as you can hear, it's multicultural fashion show. And I felt like the business sector could do so much good in promoting and advocating for multiculturalism, diversity, and inclusion. And I did that for 2 consecutive years and realized that there's something in this that I really, I felt really passionate about. And one of the themes is sustainability. So my friends and I would literally go pick up leaves from the trees and make a skirt out of them. So it's very fun, but going into college and learning more about the industry and the harm, but also the opportunities that we can we have in this industry made me want to do something about it for a cause that's greater than myself and my own selfish love for the fashion industry. Yeah.
Thank you. It's amazing. Elle?
Hi, I'm happy to be here, first of all. Yeah, Stephanie, thank you again for reaching out and inviting me to talk. And hopefully everyone here learns from each other, not just from the guest panelists, because I think we're all very knowledgeable. And even if we know a little bit, I think that's enough. And yeah, hopefully we'll continue all this whole fashion journey together. But yeah, my pronouns are she, her, and I'm on the, I never know how to say it, and I always feel so bad, but it's the Watamee land. I'm near Chicago, Illinois. Yeah, I'm happy to share a little bit of my slow fashion journey right now with y'all. Basically, I got into slow fashion back in college. I had no idea about the issues in the fashion industry in high school, even though I've loved fashion my whole life. And as a kid, I dreamed to be a fashion designer. I dreamed to, have my designs on magazines. But it was actually in the English class my freshman year of college that I found out about sweatshops. I read an article and that kind of sparked like, oh my God, what is this? And at the time I was studying business and fashion merchandising, and I found it increasingly odd that no one was talking about sweatshop conditions. No one was talking about the ethics or the social issues behind, fashion. And I would just see my business classes just focus on profit maximization and efficiency. And they didn't really talk about how the labor were human hands and they were in a way just reduced down to numbers. So that started to bug me. And I started to question like, why aren't my classes teaching me this? It's such like the issues in the fashion industry are so huge. They impact so many people. And it rubbed me the wrong way. I started to question things. I started to Google, and I was lucky enough to come across Fashion Revolution, and that was the first introduction to like me being exposed to a movement that was trying to, reform consumers to be more conscious about what they're doing and spreading awareness of everything that's going almost behind the scenes. And yeah, and ever since then, I've been questioning, Googling. It's been a lot of it's been a very lonely journey, and I just wanted to share it. I wanted to see like what else I can do to, yeah, give what I knew, because it took so much for me to investigate. And so that's how I started my ethical fashion blog, that I think that's how Stephanie found me. And it's so cool to like just connect over social media with people. It's crazy how people are actually listening to me. I post random stuff on my stories and I post random things that are related to slow fashion, and people are learning and growing. And I'm realizing just how powerful like online activism and education is, even though it may be termed as like collectivism and not effective. But I think like these spaces in itself and just attempting to do something is like so powerful. And so I'm really grateful to be here and to, yeah, explore a little bit more about the issues and all the things related to fast fashion and slow fashion.
Wow, thank you. Yes, definitely, I agree. It can be really a lonely journey, but I know I recently joined the slow fashion ambassador community, and so that's great. It is online, but they do have chapters. So if any of y'all are interested in joining a slow fashion community, you can definitely find a local chapter near you, and if not, you can start one. Um, Awesome. Well, thank you both for introducing yourselves and again for being here. Before we go into our Q&A section, I do have something interactive for the audience and panelists to do too if you're interested. So I'm going to put out a poll, and essentially what this requires to do is if you can and if you want to go into your closet, your drawers, whatever you want to do, and count how many tops you currently have in your wardrobe and how many bottoms you currently have in your wardrobe. And it doesn't have to be specific, so you should be able to see the poll right now. I put a range, so if you don't want to count, you're like, oh, I know I have definitely more than 20 plus, then go ahead and put 20 plus. But if you have less, I'm just interested to see how much clothes we all have, because again, some of us are probably new to this topic and some of us probably have already started our sustainable fashion journey. Okay. So I'm gonna give about a minute and a half, 2 minutes. I know it's not a long time, I'm really sorry. 10 to 20, 20 plus. And also, I know, California doesn't really have seasons, but we do have some cold and some hot. But if your current wardrobe is only fall clothes, then only count your fall clothes because that's what's in season right now. So don't worry about if you're like, oh, I have so much more. Okay, interesting. So it looks like a good amount of us have 20 plus tops, which I think makes sense. And then for bottoms, it's a little less. So, okay, I'm gonna end that poll. Thank you all so much for participating. And a second poll is based on what you have in your closet now, on average, how many of those tops or bottoms do you usually wear in a month? So think back, reflect, how much of the clothes that you have in your closet right now do you actually wear? Okay. Okay, this is cool. So definitely for bottoms, 5 or less seems to be the most popular. And for tops, 10 or less seems to be the most popular. Okay, I'm gonna give a little more time for everyone to respond. What about if we gain weight and can't fit into our clothes in our closet? That's okay, you know? All right. Okay, I'm gonna close the poll in 3, 2, 1. All right, so 5 or less, 18%, 10 or less for tops, 47%. So 47%, the highest for tops at 10 or less. I think for a month, you know, that's not bad. And on average, how many bottoms do you usually wear in a month? 5 or less is the most popular. And the last question was, how many of the tops or bottoms in your wardrobe did you buy in the past year? 5 or less. So that's good. Not too much. Consumerism was the highest one, 65%, and a couple of us more than that. But I hope that this webinar will show you and give you some tools to, start your sustainable fashion journey. All right. Well, thank you all so much for participating. That was awesome. I'm glad that you were able to engage in a way besides just looking at our faces on the screen. So I want to go ahead and start our Q&A section of this. So the way I want this to work is I'll pose the question, and then if Elle goes first and Anli goes second for the next question, Anli, you can take it first and then Elle second. So the first question is, in what ways does fast fashion impact the environment, and why should we care about fast fashion?
I can start. Well, I think fast fashion impacts not just environment, it impacts a lot of human rights and labor issues as well. So there's social aspect to it, and there's also cultural aspect to it. But if we just focus on the environment, the one is emission of greenhouse gases. According to UN reports that the number has been out for a long time. The fashion industry is responsible for 10% of global carbon emission, and that is more than all international flights plus maritime shipping combined. And just imagine how big this industry is, and if we ever want to actively challenge the climate policy, and this is the part we should look at. And I think another way to look at it's also the massive amount of water and energy consumed, the dye, the water, the chemicals, and how they flows into, very often in developed country, they flow into rivers where local residents drink the water from those rivers. And I think there is also the depletion of non-renewable sources, as well as the use of microplastic. And that's something, it takes hundreds of years to decompose. Yeah, I'll stop there then.
Yeah, I think there's a huge impact on environment. their fast fashion. I think defining fast fashion, if anyone is not quite aware, just to clear it out into the open, but fast fashion is just the fast production of clothing that are made often from like very cheap materials. And so like brands often prioritize that things are just made like fast for money, and all the focus is on profit maximization, that the environment is not a big focus. And so the supply chain is so complex that it's hard. The supply chain in the fashion industry is so complex that it's hard to like exactly trace every exact way that the fashion industry affects the environment, because we're part of the environment in a way. And yeah, so I think to avoid going on tangents, yeah, there is a lot of carbon emissions produced by the fashion industry, but also we are part of just the world, you know, like our skin is, I think, the second largest organ on our skin. And the way that clothing is made, there's a lot of chemicals, usually synthetic, that are involved in the production, and we're literally wearing clothing, and so you never really know what you're putting on your skin when it's like first out of the store, and that's kind of scary. And I would love to go into details about like how fashion industry overall is like really affecting the climate crisis in a really bad way. And I don't know if y'all have been keeping up with the recent news of how the fashion industry has been trying to become more involved in the COP26 conversation, but basically the Fashion Roundtable was trying to get the fashion industry more involved in the climate crisis, and this like event where all the world leaders came together to talk about the climate crisis and to find solutions. And basically the letter emphasized how we really need to make drastic change before it's too late. And so I think the main priority is that the fashion industry stops contributing towards climate change, that they go on a path where we can ensure like we don't we don't head towards a climate crisis or go further into the climate crisis as we are. And yeah, I think to simplify facts, like we're consuming too much, we're overproducing too much, and if we don't stop, like we don't have a second earth to supply everything that everyone wants. Yeah, to simplify. And why should we care about fast fashion? I think it affects everyone, you know, like we all consume clothing, and it can be really depressing to see all the facts. That's why I went on so many tangents right now. Like it's really hard to like just like know how badly it's affecting the environment. But I think there's hope that we can really just pressure brands to be accountable and to like set their target straight, to not prioritize profit maximization anymore, but to like care about the earth and its people, because at the end of the day, like we don't have another earth to go to. And it's going back to the question too, like what is clothing serving? Is it actually for the consumers or to fill pockets, you know, with money? So that's a little bit of that.
Yeah, great responses. Thank you. I didn't even think about, you know, the chemicals that are in our clothing when they are synthetic or like cheaper fabrics. And that is, we're putting it in our skin and our skin absorbs that. So you always learn something new, even if you've already been learning. So you touched on this question a little bit, but I was wondering if you or Only can go a little bit more in depth. But you know, what is the fast fashion lighter cycle for those who don't know? And how do consumerism, which you alluded to already, how does that and social media trends play a role?
Yeah, I think explaining this topic for me is like extremely difficult. Just want to start off, but sorry if I go on a lot of tangents, but yeah, basically fast fashion again is the quick production of clothing, and basically the cycle is to produce as much as possible in the quickest time possible. So like brands are always producing new trends to always come out with new clothing. And consumerism and social media, I feel like, are so deeply connected because youth right now are online a lot, and they get their news usually from social media like Instagram and TikTok and Twitter. And there's also a concept called FOMO, which is like fear of missing out. So trends are deeply related to like how people see themselves, because I personally used to wear a lot of trends because I wanted to fit in. I wanted to look cool. I wanted to feel a certain way, and like clothing was the gateway for that. And because we're living like in a pandemic, we don't really like see each other a lot like we used to. Social media is a way for us to be like, hey, I'm here, I'm alive, look at me, I'm cool, you know. And it's really easy to consume a lot to show like you're relevant, you're trendy, you're cool, you know. And because there's so many trends coming out, I've seen and I've noticed friends are always shopping to keep up and to post and to just have something to talk about. But I think those things aren't bad in themselves, but I always try to make people think about like why do you need trends? Like, why does it matter that you have to stay relevant? Why does it matter that you have to be liked by everyone? Why does it matter that you have to buy trends? Like, why can't you find your own style? And I try to frame it as like a good conversation, and it always leads to like, who are you and what do you care about and what does clothing mean to you? Because it can be really easy to just want to be like, oh, let me buy this trend because I'll look good because it's what everyone else is wearing, and I'll just post because I want to post and feel like I'm part of something. So yeah, I think it involves making space for people to learn about themselves so that I don't get like too caught up in like, this is bad, like what are you doing? But yeah, consumerism and social media definitely does contribute to fast fashion because it involves, you know, buying and buying and buying.
Yeah, I totally agree with Al. And I think, so I studied the supply chain of this. It's like Al said, it's super complicated, but if you think it broadly, it's basically this planning, design, product development, selling, production, and delivery. Maybe you add in marketing in between. But what it's concerning is that these days, I mean, it depends on the companies, right? If it's a, you know, custom personalized item, it's probably going to take, can take between 3 months to 6 months. But with this fast fashion, the timeline, the calendar is compressed over and over again. So it's like, can we have this entire cycle within 30 weeks? If so, can we push it to 15 weeks and 10 weeks and shorter and shorter? And these suppliers, they have to meet the demand, and the social media plays a big role in the demand. Well, I personally think both suppliers and buyers have responsibility in this. But consumerism, and especially social media on Instagram, it really reinforced this influencers glamorous post and pressure the users who we swipe all the time. So sort of like having this ego idea, can I look better? Can I look perfect? And therefore, it reinforces the need for more clothes, something new, something trendy, that looks cool on the influencers' photos and posts. So that's the demand side. Therefore, I think that I would challenge the suppliers, you know, provide more sustainable clothes and materials. But at the same time, I think there's a lot of education needs to be done for the consumer side, because ultimately, I think for business to be sustainable, for me, it's like not really, it's not saying let's destroy the fast fashion or let's destroy these brands. I'm saying that how can you have long-term business plan and strategy while considering human welfare, and that is to consider what business strategy allows you to provide sustainable materials and clothes for consumers, but at the same time, having done enough education for the consumers, they are aware of the situation, and therefore they do buy from you, but they don't buy every day. And it's like what Patagonia like telling its clients, like, don't buy us. If you have one, please don't buy us again. Or if you really want something new, trade in for the old Patagonia jackets you have. And that's really inspiring.
Yeah, I like how you mentioned that, you do think there is some kind of responsibility on the buyer, the consumer, right? Because if we're the ones that are also asking for more and more and more, then that's where the demand comes from. And I mean, I'm glad that we're having this conversation because this is an educational space and this will be online. So if people come across it, they'll see it, they'll watch it, and they'll learn. And I also, you alluded to human rights and labor conditions, and that's our next question. So, for people that don't know or that may have known but haven't done enough research, what are the labor conditions for the people producing these fast fashion clothes?
Yeah, I can start. So with the number, I like to throw out numbers because I'm an economics person and I like to back it up with numbers. So 80% of apparels made for majority of fast fashion companies are women, young women between age of 18 to 24. And these are predominantly women in developing countries who had no education previously. And that aside, then there is also child labor problems. And having lived in Asia, the Middle East, in Africa, I witnessed these child labor, going to work and either from the pressure of the family or just survival thing to do. It's really touching because it's like, well, it's great that they have a job that they can use that for food to survive, for basic human needs, but at the same time it's like, wow, they're not in school. So the contradiction is really real and raw when you see that in person. And I think this issue has been ongoing for a long time in the fashion industry. I don't think the fashion industry has changed much in the past 50 years, but I think almost a decade ago in 2013, the factory fallout, the 8th-floor factory that housed several garment factories collapsed in Dhaka, Bangladesh, killed more than 1,000 garment workers and injured another 2,500 workers. And this has been the result of low capital and labor intensive industry where you pay very little to the garment workers in a terrible, inhuman condition that is a building, right? It's not even safe to house them for the work that they do. And having watched some documentaries, those of you having watched the documentary by Italian filmmaker Livia Firth, please go watch it. But documentaries presented this conundrum for the local sellers. So the fast fashion companies, they would send somebody to India, for example, and they asked this factory manager, can you produce this amount of clothes for X, Y amount of cost, right? Wholesale cost. And because the need for these jobs for these young women to survive, so they will always say yes to these kind of jobs, even they were paid under living wage. And therefore, let's say H&M manager in India would go to another factory manager and say, can you produce the same amount of clothes, but with lower cost? And that this person would, the second manager in India would again say yes, because it's better than nothing. So therefore, it's a competition that the developed world created for the third world country among them, that they are fighting for the small margin for a big deal with H&M or any other fashion companies. And just imagine lower pay, the same amount of production, and that is overtime working for these young women and young children. And there is absolutely no regulation about it.
Yeah, I think just want to repeat the question. Yeah, what are the labor conditions for the people producing clothing? There's a lot of people behind the scenes making our clothing. I was surprised when I was first learning about the topic, like how much work goes into the production of our clothing. There's not only garment workers, but there's like agricultural laborers, there's textile producers, there's fashion designers, there's, even business executives can be considered part of the labor. So yeah, there's a lot of people making decisions behind one t-shirt, and there's so many hands touching every shirt that we see in every store. And it's like it blows my mind just like how much work went into one shirt, and that it didn't help the actual people that made them to have a good life is really crazy to me. But basically, to kind of explain more of the details, I want to focus on explaining like garment workers within the fashion industry. That's a personal lens that I focus on within the labor conditions. I know that it's that agricultural workers and textile producers and anyone and everyone else experiences the fashion industry specifically, but I think garment workers are the most affected by just the exploitation and unfair conditions that are found in the supply chain. And I think I want to explain sweatshops. So like Anil was alluding, garment workers are subject to a lot of really bad working conditions, and they're often housed in sweatshops, which are basically manufacturing facilities found all across the world. And basically, they suffer long hours. So I've seen reports where they work like up to like 12 to 19 hours a day, like the whole day literally they've been working. They get super low wages, so they don't earn enough to even survive despite working all day. And it's actually like super common to have sweatshops in developing countries because there are no labor laws enforced, and there's like no way to hold brands accountable to what they're doing to the workers, because like I said, the supply chain and this topic is so messy, and brands are doing everything in their power to not take responsibility. And it's really common to have subcontracting, and that's what Anil was explaining, how like you never really know like where the things are made, and there's like a mass confusion. So for example, like H&M can reach out to one factory in Bangladesh, but that factory can subcontract their work to another factory, and then H&M can like be like, oh yeah, we're making our clothing in this factory, and they may or may have not been aware that that factory they contracted their work to contracted their work to another factory. So it's just like at the end of the day, a lot of factories, a lot of brands can't trace where their clothing was made from, whether they like it or not, because of that subcontracting thing. And basically factories subcontract just to reduce costs as well. So that's something that I've been trying to look into, like how can we avoid loopholes, like how can we stop subcontracting, because it does not contribute towards a transparent and accountable supply chain at all. And so that's my personal journey, and I definitely recommend you Google it, because I can definitely not explain it within a minute. But also I want to talk a little bit more of the garment worker conditions. And please don't feel overwhelmed. Like usually when I talk about this, I overwhelm people. But okay, so like let's imagine a garment worker in Bangladesh. Basically, they're going to a sweatshop. It's a really old building, and you sit down in this really cramped like sewing machine area, and then you notice that there's locked exits. So basically they lock all the doors in the building so you do not leave. Imagine all the windows are closed and there's like really poor ventilation. The space is super crowded. So like imagine that they turn on all the sewing machines. All you hear literally all day is the tick, 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 like of the sewing machines, and that's what they hear for hours, and it can actually cause like hearing problems. The poor ventilation can cause the workers to inhale the little fibers that are found in our clothing, and it can cause like lung issues. And garment workers can actually suffer carpal tunnel syndrome, and if you don't know what that is, it's basically it hurts the body to do the same thing for hours. So one task over and over and over again. And basically garment workers do the same task all day. And they're just stationed to either like cut a piece of the shirt or to do just, yeah, one thing at a really fast pace because of like that quick production mindset that everyone has in the fashion industry. And there's been found to be like mice and cockroaches in these factories. And unfortunately, a lot of the times there's abusive managers. Usually in developing countries, there's this dominant idea that men are supposed to be the boss and the women are subject to their rule. And so the fashion industry is very much a feminist issue, not only because of that bad managerial situation, but also because a lot of the workers in the fashion industry are women. And it's unfortunate that they're often abused emotionally and even physically because managers have that much power. And the women are just trying to survive. You know, they're trying to feed their family, and they're not earning enough for the family. They can't even send their children to school. So it's really a bad situation, and that's why it makes me really passionate to continue this work, because these women don't deserve those living conditions. They don't deserve to be working in dangerous buildings where they're not taken care of, where the exits are blocked. It's actually caused a lot of death in the past, like the Rana Plaza factory incident that was explained before me. And those things should have never have happened. And I think it goes back to like, how do we ensure that brands are being accountable to their workers and also to the consumers, because they should be making products that are good for everyone. And yeah, I don't think the documentary name was ever mentioned, but it's called The True Cost. It's highly informative. It's like a 2-hour thing, and it really takes you to a journey of like finding out more of the issues in the fashion industry, because there's a lot, and it can be overwhelming, but I think those problems are also like what keeps me so motivated, like I said, because everyone deserves respect and human dignity, and the fashion industry is not serving those that need our help the most. You know, they should be able to thrive, not survive, and I don't want to contribute towards someone's misery.
Yeah, very, very powerful, both of your responses. I think we have all learned a lot. Um, and, this is why we're having this conversation about the negative social impacts and environmental impacts of the fast fashion industry. So, shifting with that along, we know the harm of it. So, how can we as consumers resist the fast fashion industry? And how do you practice sustainable fashion? Because you already started your sustainable fashion journey. So, what tips do you have to share with all of us?
I think I think fashion is so beautiful. I think it's an art form, honestly, and I think we have headed in a direction where the industry has just focused on. I think, in my perspective, what doesn't matter. Like I truly believe like money doesn't make you happy. Like money doesn't make you beautiful, and I am always tempted when I go to the mall. Like it's impossible not to go to the mall and this world in these days. And I always walk into fast fashion stores and I'm always tempted. There's always desire to get some piece, even if I recognize that it's quote unquote bad, that there's all these issues behind it. But I always remember like if it's like the clothing doesn't make me beautiful, like I make myself beautiful, like I make myself happy, like my worth comes from myself, not from external things like clothing. um and yeah, I just urge people to kind of reflect, like what does clothing mean to you, especially knowing the issues, and how do you think you can make yourself feel most beautiful, most loved, most cherished, without external things influencing that. And also I urge you to watch the True Cost documentary and remember just the effects that you're contributing to when you buy fast fashion, because it can be really easy to forget. It can be a topic you can like learn about and then you go back to your normal everyday life because this issue is not that common. And yeah, like even thrifting can be fun. Try to buy more secondhand things if you want to continue shopping. Um, and try to do it intentionally if you can. Buy what you think you only need, um, and try to make it last as long as you can. Are my top recommendations. And take it step by step. Like don't try to do everything at once, because this journey has taken me years. Like I started when I was 19. I'm 24, and I feel like I don't know enough. So yeah, do what you can.
Absolutely. So I love this question because I have been that I've been that friend who had who have been urging my close friends and my family friend circles to do the same. And these are the few things I tell them, very practical. So one is literally stop buying from fast fashion brands. And that I mean, the most powerful fast fashion brands will be Zara, H&M, Forever 21, Primark, Topshop, all that. It may seem impossible these days, but I stopped buying them after sophomore year in high school. And I mean, that is what, 6-7 years, and I haven't walked into any of those stores, and I still survived. And what I did instead is to save all my money. I didn't come from like a um like a elite or very silver. I didn't grow up with silver spoon. So what I did, instead of going to buy those, going to fast fashion stores and buy those clothes that look really nice, I save up over a period of time. And I say to myself, well, I'm working so hard at school or at work. I'm going to invest in myself, and because I'm worth it. So I save up over a period of time and go to stores that sells high quality clothes that last longer. but also more classic cut that I can wear in many different situations. Thirdly, I think during the pandemic, I was cleaning up my closet, and there are so many clothes I realized I don't wear anymore. Not because they don't fit, but it just, my style changed. And I don't like that color anymore, right? So didn't know what to do with them. And I also realized we don't really, do you realize that every day, like, there are about 5 tops and pants bottoms that you're just repeatedly wearing because you love them so much, and they're just comfortable, they look nice, they're presentable, and then we just forget the rest of them. And I think over the pandemic, I realized that I really just wear a few of them repeatedly. What I have done is that, for those clothes and dress I don't wear anymore, or I don't wear them to go out anymore, if they're comfortable, wear them at home. It's your new pajama and you don't need to buy more pajamas. And you can look chic at home when you wake up at, for 7 a.m. call. That's what I tell myself. And also just encourage others to do the same. The mantra I have with myself is that, yes, I'm going to invest in myself. I deserve something that lasts longer, something that's good, high quality. And this sounds just a lot more genuine than something like, don't buy this, don't buy that. But it's a totally different, positive and optimistic mindset to look at this purchasing behavior.
Yes, I love that. I hope that all of my TCI colleagues will show up in the most beautiful clothing now that we have our meetings after this webinar. Well, I had a couple more questions, but we are running out of time. And I think what you all shared was incredibly insightful and really educational for all of us. So I would like to wrap up. Anli and Elle, if you would like to share your social media with the audience so that they can follow you if they would like to, you can put it in the chat or you can say it out loud, whatever you prefer. And then because of this conversation, like Elle had mentioned, we don't want it to be daunting. We don't want you to leave this space with, okay, this is awful. I guess I can do some things to change my habits, but I did create some toolkits for you all to use. I will put it in the chat right here where you can access them. And essentially, I've created 3 toolkits for you. One of them is a closet revamp. So like Anli had mentioned, if you don't like clothing anymore and maybe you have a new style, you can host a clothing swap with your friends, family, community. That's a cool way to get rid of the clothes you don't want anymore and get some new ones without buying fast fashion or even spending your money at all. And it's a great way to, just have community and have fun and get new clothes sustainably. The second one is our wardrobe diet exercise, and that's a challenge for you to limit yourself to 6 staple clothing items, seeing what you can do with so little, and the timeline is up to you, whether you want to challenge yourself for a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, etc. If you do decide to do that, please tag us on Instagram at The Climate Initiative, TCI, Sustainable Fashion. We would love to see it. And the last one is the capsule wardrobe. Like Anli and Elle both mentioned, the sustainable journey is going to be a long one. Don't feel overwhelmed. Take things step by step. Do what you can afford, what is accessible to you. And I hope that you utilize these and that you are able to start slowly beginning your sustainable fashion future. All right, well, again, thank you so much, Elle and Anli, for being here, for sharing so much of your knowledge with us. I learned a lot, and I am so, so grateful to have had space with you all. And again, just thank you so much. All right, everyone. Well, I'm going to end the session. Have a great rest of your day or night. I know the 5 p.m. Eastern time people, it's dark for y'all. So have a good night. Bye.
Bye. Take care, guys.